What's up, Central Illinois business owners? We know that insurance and employee benefits are one of the most expensive, confusing, and frustrating hurdles that you face in your business today. Garrett and I work with Central Illinois businesses to create insurance and risk management programs and employee benefit solutions that reduce risk, enhance your business, and maximize your profitability. Head to CIBLinsurance.com to learn more about insurance solutions that are specifically designed for your Central Illinois businesses and to watch our educational videos about work comp, employee health insurance, commercial insurance, and other insurance products to help your business go to the next level. Go to CIBLinsurance.com. We'll see you there.
Welcome to the Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast, where business owners, thought leaders, and community champions from across Central Illinois come to share their story. The Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast. Anything less would be uncivilized.
What's up, Central Illinois? I'm Derek Hayden. I'm here with Garrett Ulmer. We are your hosts for the Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast, powered by Zambu. Zambu is a delicious grapefruit or wildberry vodka-based spirit infused with a Brazilian buzz button. It's smooth, tasty, and leaves you with a signature tingle. Learn more at ZambuLiquors.com. Zambu, taste the tingle. All right, everybody, let's welcome today's guest. Today's guest is the founder and principal designer at Leslie Tyler Design, and she was featured on HGTV's Cheap Old Houses. Ladies and gents of Central Illinois, please welcome Reagan Leslie. How are you doing, Reagan?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being on the show with us. We're excited to learn more about a few different things that you're doing or have done. But before that, we want to get to know you a little better through our speed round. I'm going to kick it to Garrett, and we're going to ask you our speed round questions.
Awesome.
Absolutely. We've got 6 questions that under 60 seconds, like we kind of talked about before we jumped on here. I don't know that anybody's made it in under 60 seconds because Derek and I can get a little off track sometimes, as we say, squirrel from time to time and jump around. So we'll try to get you in under 60 seconds. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Your first concert that you ever attended?
Beyonce.
Yes.
Yeah, it actually wasn't that long ago. Yeah. I think it was her, Formation tour. So yeah.
Cool.
So here I go interrupting real quick.
Yeah. First live concert.
I love it.
Only live concert, actually.
Really?
Okay.
Well, that's a good one to go to.
Yeah.
So I'm going to interrupt already. So Francie Heinrichson's, who recommended you to us as a podcast guest, the episode that she was on, we named it Who Run the World Girls after the Beyonce song. So yeah. So little shout out to Beyonce and Francie there.
There we go. What's your favorite movie?
Oh, you're talking to like an old film person. Gosh. Woo! My favorite. Okay, if I had to nail down one, I love Julia Roberts. Like My Best Friend's Wedding is, one that sticks out, but I could probably go on. Pretty Woman is another. We'll say My Best Friend's Wedding. I feel like that's a good solid.
There
classic.
you go. Favorite ice cream flavor?
Chocolate chip cookie dough. That was easy.
Perfect. I'm right there with you. iPhone or Android?
iPhone recently, but I'm not going to knock Android. I'm not going to knock it. But yes, I am an iPhone. I'm team iPhone now.
That's the first transition we've heard of.
That is for sure. I feel like if somebody switches to iPhone, they're probably not ever going to go. It's just the simplicity. It makes sense.
Yeah.
For
the
sure.
The camera is high quality though.
Absolutely. Favorite social media platform?
Instagram. That's where I'm most comfortable. I'm trying to look at TikTok, but it's these Gen Zs really got it locked down, and I feel a little old. But
if you figure out how to use TikTok, you let us know because
I'm watching right now, like the old lady on the sideline.
It's so funny because Derek and I've talked about TikTok, I feel like, for the past year and a half, and here my 65-year-old dad has TikTok. So
right. Some of these 65-year-olds are killing it. I just, like I said, Instagram that's where I'm comfortable. I understand it, I get it, makes sense. But that's where you'll find me most of the time.
Yep. And last but not least, why Central Illinois?
Oh, well, I'm born and raised in Springfield. I went to school in Bloomington Normal. So for me, Central Illinois, that's home. That's what it is. And I really think like even looking for like where I was going to plant my roots and ended up in Peoria, it was like there was this diversity that I think a lot of outside people don't realize is here. But it was, accessible and digestible as opposed to some of the bigger markets that I've spent time in Atlanta and obviously Chicago and California even, and all of those just like, it was just too much. And this is small businesses, you are given a chance to actually succeed and make something happen. So for me, like I said, I'm born and raised here, love it. And, I haven't really found anything else like it, worth leaving. So here I am.
Awesome.
That's great. So you mentioned it, small businesses.
Yes.
So Reagan, that's the main reason we wanted to highlight you today was you've kind of developed a cool little niche of small business. And we would like for you to tell us a little bit about, where you started, how you got to where you are now. Explain a little bit about your business.
Yes. So I founder and principal designer of Leslie Tyler Design. So we are a boutique interior design firm. And I have a niche through really developing my business of historic and period buildings and homes. So that I grew up in an old house. Again, I've just always been a fan of architecture. I remember visiting, the Dana Thomas house in Springfield and, thinking, that I was one day going to be an architect. And I didn't make it there, but I've always had an appreciation for what they were. And a lot of the period architecture, you're looking at things that were made like by hand or, we didn't have power tools, we didn't have mass production. So in a, kind of an interesting way, all of these pieces within these historic homes are really custom built for that specific home. So I grew up with a father who, he made my violin that I played in the symphony and he worked for the state, but that was just a little hobby that he did. So I've always grown up just appreciating that is someone's art, that someone put time and effort into it. And it would just, break my heart when people would kind of come in and just bulldoze through them and say, well, they're out of date, let's just update it. So how I got into design was really how to make an impact in preservation. I didn't come with, tons of access to just buy a whole bunch of properties, but I kept thinking if I can teach people how to work within their historical context in a way that was also, youthful and fresh and it felt modern and it had those amenities, then maybe there'd be a chance that they could save them, because I kept thinking that like homeowners basically weren't given options. It was either, and their ideas live in a museum or blow it all out and just, do something modern. And there wasn't kind of this in between. So I think preservation probably came first and my love for that. And then design was really my tool and mechanism for impacting that industry. So I founded my company in 2019, May of 2019. And we, kind of went through a few iterations. Francie, as you mentioned, she did my SEO marketing early on and really helped hone what my, ideal client looked like and how to make that accessible in Central Illinois. And 2020 happened and it was like a deer in the headlights, because I remember I was like, I finally figured it out. And then, the bottom fell out. So when that happened, I remember distinctly like talking to Francie and thinking like, well, do I just pack it up? Do I just pack it up and just wait this out? And I was pleasantly surprised to find out that there was actually the opposite, that a lot of people were sitting at home staring at either spaces that weren't inspiring or spaces that they just never had the time to sit in before because they were always busy doing other things. And it actually gave my business a boost, which I would, even to this day would bet like, that's crazy. It wouldn't happen in like a middle of a pandemic when the entire world's collapsing, like your small new business is actually thriving. So that was the same year that Cheap Old Houses reached out through Instagram, another social media marketing miracle. And they found my house, which I was just taking pictures of what I was doing around my home. And they were intrigued and came and filmed the winter of that year. Actually, we had snow on the ground. We were all like masked up and the windows were all open. It was 2 degrees outside because of COVID, but they had it done. So middle of last year, 2021, it aired. And that really, I think, did a lot in solidifying what I was doing, validating what I was doing, and really helped I guess, make that foundation a little bit more stable in and around my own community. So
That's
I guess,
awesome.
the last 3 years in a nutshell.
So
That's great.
HGTV reached out to you. You had not submitted anything to them.
No, they actually, Cheap Old Houses, like I said, was the show. They have an Instagram account as well. And I think they asked people to submit like who they, any old homeowner that they thought was interesting. And I wish I could find it because someone tagged me in their post. So I won't say they just plucked me out of the sky. I guess it was submitted. It was not by me though. And so then they reached out to me, and really the rest was history. So yeah, they contacted me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in sharing your story?" And I'm like, absolutely. So
That's so cool.
Well, that is awesome, because I would have guessed, not knowing any different, that you would have had to, submit something. Wasn't it a few years ago around COVID, Derek, that they were doing like an old town uplifting, and you had to submit stuff to then possibly come to a facelift to your downtown or things like that.
Yes, yes, there's this thing
for them
like
to
that.
just find you, even if somebody tagged, that is amazing. And that has to
really, I mean, like I said, it was one of those things that doesn't happen. It's not something I would even plan for, as a business model. Like, okay, you do this, and then there's a pandemic that happens, and then HGTV will find you, and then you'll be, on this course. But again, I think it's a testament to, like, if you are walking in like your purpose, which I think that even business owners, like, there's that one thing that you're like, this is how I can be impactful. This is how I can, really your ministry, for a lot of, reasons. And I think once you hit that on then the rest will follow. But it's sometimes finding that niche that's, the little difficult part. But I always encourage people, like, take time, like, just keep it up, and you'll figure it out. Cause I went through, like I said, a few iterations of who am I serving and what do they need and all of these things. And I'm just now 3 years in, I think, really understanding who I serve and how to show up for them.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, that just shows you the power of social media and social networking, and if you just continue to, put yourself out there and try new things, how one small thing can turn everything, in a direction you never intended or expected.
Exactly.
So that's so cool. So you mentioned creating your ideal client, creating your ideal customer who you talk to, and you and Francie kind of working together to do that. So who is your ideal client or ideal prospect or person you work with?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I will say that you always have your ideal client, but then when you speak to one, everyone else finds value in that as well. Mm-hmm. So I always say, like, my ideal client, and actually, if you looked at my client book today, it's like, where's your ideal client in that? But because sometimes they're in newer homes. It's not that I will turn anyone away if they don't live in a period home, but really, I say who I serve in an exemplary way would be your old homeowner who values their architecture, but they want those modern amenities. They want to have a kitchen that suits their modern lifestyle. They want to have a bathroom, those amenities that make it home. And then I love playing with modern art in historic contexts. So my background, I went to school for theater arts. So really my background in interior design came from stage set design. Which is very whimsical, and it pushes boundaries. I mean, my office, I paint black. Like, it's just, there's not a lot of rules. So I think I'd carry that over in what I can, offer a space. So we might keep your original coffered ceiling, but we might do, a black lacquer on it, which is very modern. But I always think in my mind, like, if the elements are still there, then if somebody comes behind you and really wants to either, strip the paint off, they can, or do something else, but your story in your home becomes a part of a narrative that hopefully will continue on even after you're gone as well. And we're not doing anything so permanent that someone comes in and is like, you've ripped it all out in that way. So I would say, like, a young homeowner who loves old houses, old architecture, values it, and really wants to work one-on-one in terms of building a home that reflects who they are.
Very nice. What's up, Central Illinois? You know what you all need? You all need some CIBL podcast swag. And thanks to our newest sponsor, Jedco Sales, you can now find our swag at CIBLmerch.com. You can find t-shirts, sweatshirts, polos, hats, and more, all classically adorned with our famous CIBL podcast logo. If you want to represent and support your favorite podcast, check out CIBLmerch.com. That's CIBLmerch.com. If you like our store, you can also build your very own business swag store with the help of Jedco Sales in Effingham, Illinois. Jedco is owned by previous CIBL guests, Andrew and Laren Dial. They've set up a special discount offer for CIBL guests and listeners to set up your very own custom branded swag store. You can now offer branded apparel to your employees, customers, and fans, and Jedco will fulfill all the orders for you. Contact Jedco at sales@jedcosales.com. That's sales@JEDCO sales.com, and tell them that Garrett and Derek sent you. Let Jedco help you get noticed.
That is cool. Now, do you have a radius of service? Do you confine yourself to a certain area?
I'm based in Peoria, so a lot of my clients are in and around that region. I've had clients in Springfield. I've had clients in Galesburg. I had a consultation in Chicago. So that's my typical radius, but I've had a client as far as Milledgeville, Georgia, which is kind of in between Atlanta and Savannah. And again, a lot of that is in part of the show of when you have kind of this national platform. I tend to not go outside of that central Illinois bubble unless it's like a really like good project because of just, the constraints. But, with modern technology, a lot can be done in terms of consulting, even outside of your geographical location, which I'm sure, you guys doing Zoom, podcasts, you can go anywhere if you need to. So.
Yep, that's right. So you mentioned older homes. Is there a certain time period that you prefer to work with? Or you said some people might have newer homes. What's kind of like the cutoff?
Cutoff.
Yeah.
There, I will say there's no cutoff. I am working with a client who I think their home is maybe 4 years old. So it's brand new, and it was really a custom built home, but she's just like, I need you to help me with the wallpaper and like the, the decorating of it. And then I've had, typically when I think of historic, I think of kind of turn of the century. So early 1900s, late 1800s, especially in and around Illinois region. When you get out, northeast, you'll get 1700s. We don't have a lot of those still standing just because they weren't this far yet. But I say kind of turn of the century. So my home was built in 1908. I just purchased kind of a pet project that I'm rehabilitating, and that was built in 1920. So, but there's a lot of, really cool mid-century homes as well that have some interesting, architectural elements. Those tend to lean more modern. So when people are like, I want open floor plan and real sleek, I'm like, mid-century is your gal. Like, you don't need a Victorian. That's all chopped up. Like, let's go mid-century. So, but yeah, really just, it comes from an appreciation of it. Like, it is a sculptural piece that we live our lives within. And I think that our homes, especially after COVID, we realize like we spend time in them and they affect how we feel. They affect how we interact with the outside world. We need places that we feel safe and we can retreat to. And that might be different for each person. So your, beautiful, restful space might look completely different than what I find restful. But I think finding those things, helping people realize the importance of their homes. It doesn't, I love magazines, but my point is not to give everybody just a magazine worthy home. It's a home that you feel like when you go home, you're like, yes, I feel at peace here. I feel welcomed here. And that to me is far more important than just, it's beautiful and I can call Architectural Digest. Although nice, that's not the goal all the time.
Sure. Very cool.
Well, you and my wife would get along great. When we first moved back here to Shelbyville, we looked at a Victorian home, and she's still mad that we didn't buy it. And I was scared to death of the house, because it was right around 1900 or pre-1900 built, and it had been redone and had some updates and stuff, and was an extremely cool house. I'll be honest, I was a little negative when we first walked in, and when we walked in and started looking around, I was like, holy cow, this is awesome. It was really cool, but it was just, it scared me to death.
What I will say though, is that I think, now don't get me wrong, there are there are definitely those big expensive projects that people are like, oh, this is all hell's breaking loose. But because I won't say like they're all great and roses. But I will say that a large part of these older homes are built with such quality materials, even like framing. This old growth wood gets so hard that it's almost like concrete and indestructible. So even the dilapidated homes, sometimes I'll have homeowners that will freak out. They're like, oh my gosh, so my foundation is bowing in and the house is going to collapse. And I'm like, this has happened over like the last 150 years. So even if we have to put it off for 2 years, like it's a slow decline. And a lot of times it's manageable by pacing your renovation, which again is another thing that I try to preach to my clients, that like, we're not living in a television show where everything is all done at once. And I don't really recommend people going and getting, big construction loans to redo. Like, I mean, you can, but a lot of people don't. And that is perfectly acceptable as well. Like, it's not poo-poo. So I do my home, like I do it by cash. So it's like, I get a little cash, then I do a little room, and then I, over time build it. So I try to, HGTV is wonderful, but sometimes I feel like people are like, if I can't do it like the Property Brothers, then I'm failing. No.
Exactly.
Don't do that.
No, we live in that Instagram world, of instant gratification, to where we think that, well, they just bought that, and 2 days after they walked in, it looked modern, but yet still in its era, not quite the fact most of the time.
Yeah, I try to people give grace. It is okay. Take your time. That's perfectly fine.
So you mentioned mainly Central Illinois, some outside of Central Illinois clients. And Instagram is obviously one of your main communication resources. It sounds like maybe your website. So how do you find your prospective clients? Do they find you, or do you have referral sources?
Yeah. So we're getting kind of to the point where now they're getting to be referrals. So that's, really where you want to be, because that means, that's kind of reinforcing the fact that you're doing a good job when clients say, hey, who did you use for this? So that I would say locally is a lot of referral based. And then I kind of couple that with marketing of using Instagram to kind of tell the world also what I'm doing, and being really intentional about this network of industry colleagues that are working in other fields. So I just spoke with it was a roundtable that was put on by the Preservation League of New York State. So again, the relationship that I had with the host of the show, I went to an award ceremony with them, and they were hosting, the awards. And so those sorts of connections where you can like, okay, well, I've got an architect in New York, and I've got, another one out in Oklahoma. And then I've got, someone else that's doing something similar out in California. And it's like, and again, nobody's really necessarily, just teaming up just to do projects, but more teaming up just to kind of keep everybody's ear to the ground of what's going on in preservation as a whole. Because what our industry, our niche historic preservation industry is up against is finding qualified trades and craftsmen that can do the work. Because as much as we love, to save a window, if you don't have anybody in your town that knows how to restore a window, it doesn't matter if you want it or not, you can't get it. So there's a couple different schools. One I've worked with their graduates closely is the American College for the Building Arts, and they're located in Charleston. So Charleston obviously has a thriving, preservation community and network. And so their graduates are kind of slowly trickling out. But I think the school was only founded maybe 10 years ago. So not very long, and so I'm hoping that, again, the more that clients request it of contractors are willing to kind of weave those specialty skill sets into, their subs in terms of what they have available to offer. And then again, homeowners are now given an option of, okay, we could replace all your windows. And some people, I'm just using windows as an example, are like, yeah, let's do it. And then you've got the other ones that are like, I'd rather rebuild this. And I've got somebody that can do that too. And so now we're giving people more diverse options in what they can do. But that's, again, that comes from building a wide reaching network of people that are all kind of working in the same ecos. So.
Right. So you mentioned you were in a different field before you started this business. So I would like, if possible, for you to share kind of for
roller coaster
for listeners who might be in your shoes, where they have a passion or a hobby or something that they really enjoy that they've considered turning into a business, but they're not sure, they're scared to, dip their toe in the water and they don't know where to start. Do you have any recommendations or ideas for those people who are listening?
Yeah. It probably doesn't sound great. Jump off the cliff. There's really no way to say it without saying that. I came from like a theater arts background and really wanted to do like producing and things of that nature. Right before I started doing interior design, I was doing logistics management. So it's actually like I would last like delivery. So really off of my creative endeavors. It was, intended to just be the foundation so that I could one day do this. But I guess it never really dawned on me to like go apprentice at a, design firm or get a degree in design. Like, and I think I naively was just like, how hard can it be? Now I have, since done a lot of research on what that, business model looks like. I'm not saying just jump and don't do anything, but I think just sometimes having the goal to just say, I can do this. Like, there's nothing stopping you, and just go for it. And you will learn along the way. Like, you just, be gracious, be humble, ask people what, worked for them, and consider all of those, things that may help, may not, may see things you want to look out for. But I think by and large, we often kind of limit ourselves because we think that we have to do something, before we're ready or before we're qualified. And I think a lot of times, even now, I'm an artist, so art is subjective, and I'm constantly asking myself, like, am I even good at this? Like, I don't know. And I think it's just like, offer what you have in, the most authentic way. And really just trust that if you find your niche, you find your thing that is, really has been designed for you, then the rest will follow. So
very nice.
Yeah,
so just do it. Just do it.
Just jump. And again, I've done other like smaller businesses that didn't work. So even this was like, we'll see if it works. And 3 years later it will, and maybe in 5 years it won't, but right now it is. So just go for it and enjoy the ride.
Awesome. Yep. That's great. So we always try to ask, are you a reader or do you listen to podcasts very often?
I listen to podcasts as probably more than reading. I've got, it's like 10 pages a day that I have to knock out at least, because, without it, then you like forget how to read. But yeah.
Do you have a podcast or book or any other educational material that you would recommend to maybe more for entrepreneurs or people who are looking to learn something? Anything you'd recommend for people?
Well, some of my favorites, specifically if there's a designer that's listening and kind of wondering that, I listen to a lot of The Business of Design, which is a designer out of Canada. And she talks all things about contracts, writings, how much to charge, how to, work with your team, and so on and so forth. So that is specific to design. And then one of my favorite books, I'm trying to figure out, I'm going to say the title, I don't know who the author is You're a Badass. Nice. And then there's Never Split the Difference, which is a negotiating book, which I absolutely love, because you're constantly negotiating, I think, as a small business owner, and figuring out, like, there's lots of things that I'm like, well, I could do this, or I could do this. And, I always have to go back to like, don't split the difference. So, those are, I would say, probably my top 3 resources. But constantly, even YouTube, they have those like little inspirational, like 30 minutes. And it's like, I don't know, the compilation of like all these like motivational speeches. But, even listening to that in the morning, sometimes when you're like, I don't feel like this. And then I'll turn that on and like hop in the shower. And then by the time I'm done, I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can do this again. But it's, nice. It's a marathon. So you just have to keep yourself motivated in whatever way. So
I used to listen to those YouTube ones. So before I got into insurance, I was in a marketing position of, door to door. And they wanted us to hit 10 to 20 doors a day, which you can hit 10 doors in 2 seconds. I mean, depending on where you're at. So, I mean, there'd be times I could hit 30 to 40 doors a day, depending on, if I was in Springfield, and you get beat up. I mean, you get beat up pretty bad. Imagine. And I would listen to those YouTube things for about 10 to 20 seconds. I'd pull up and I would psych myself up.
Yep.
And then I'd walk in the door, and if you got beat up 5 doors in a row, you'd better go sit back down in the car and listen to that and say, there's a purpose behind what I'm doing. You're just
Exactly.
looking for the yes. Somebody's
Yep.
going to have a conversation with you. Somebody's going to need your help. Keep
Or-
fighting, keep punching, and keep going. So
Or if you read Never Split the Difference, you might get the no,
that's right.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Which apparently
There
is
you
not
go.
a bad thing. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
That means like that's a good thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I think it's about really, and one thing I did last summer, I did I don't know if you're familiar with the 75 hard challenge.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. So I did that. And
Oh,
afterwards
nice.
it's like, if you can control the mind, that's really the battle. I think everything else after that, really, in my opinion, is easy at that
Yep.
point. But controlling that mind and having, that is priceless. So people don't necessarily have to do 75 hard. I would recommend it if you can, because it really, for me, it was amazing at what I could accomplish and like my mindset. But I realized how powerful my mind was in the grand scheme of things. And instead of chasing even clients, sometimes, we are so concerned with, okay, I need new clients and how do I market to them? How do I talk to them? And it's like, if you are, in order, they will come. And surprisingly, they do. They pop out of nowhere and then you're getting referrals. And it's like, because you are investing in yourself. So yeah, that's something I would
That's
always recommend.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I had the surprised look on my face when you mentioned Never Split the Difference, that's 2 podcast guests in a row who have read that book. And
Okay.
Garrett and I are huge believers, followers in those ideas.
Yeah.
We have.
We
read it
use them on a
multiple times.
daily basis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's, it's something that I think it's something you have to be mindful of,
Yeah.
because it's not something that we're typically, I don't think, taught in traditional, schooling and upbringing. It's kind of like you go to college, you get a job, and then you appease that job so that you could, have security in that job. And then, we realize it's like, it's kind of all an illusion, really. So it's like, what illusion do you want to be under? But yeah, I think reteaching ourselves how to be entrepreneurs in this world, at least our generation, maybe our younger, because I've got a young, little girl, and Francie, does as well. So we're always like, how can we teach them, basically the lessons that we're learning so that they already, are kind of ahead of the curve coming out of school. So maybe that next generation will have kind of a head start. But I think right now, at least, us millennials, Gen Xers, we're like, we have to kind of reteach ourselves how to have, those cojones to psych ourselves out before we go in and get beat up.
That's
again.
right.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, very cool. Well, believe it or not, Reagan, we are at the 30-minute mark.
Oh,
So
boy.
before we get off of here, would you be able to share with our listeners and followers where they can find you? You mentioned Instagram.
Yeah.
What's your website, wherever you prefer them to reach out to you at?
Yes. So my website is leslietylerdesign.com. And I'm, again, on Instagram quite a bit. And the handle is called, it's Black House 7, spelled all out. And what that stands for, because people are like, what does that mean? Well, I do love the color black, and I use it a lot of times in my design. But Black House is essentially representative of kind of those untold stories of these historic homes, and how it really encompassed a lot of diversity in its creation. So there's a lot of craftsmen and artists that worked in and around these homes, and the reason that they're here today. So I do a lot of trying to kind of uncover those untold stories and give, credit where credit is due. And then 7 is actually my daughter's name. So 7 represents kind of doing that work so that we can preserve it for that future generation that's going to come out. And, again, if we destroy it, we're not going to have anything to tell them in the future. So Black House 7 is where you can find me on Instagram. And then there is a Facebook page, Leslie Tyler Design, that you can update me as well. But Instagram is usually the best if you want to DM me or reach out. And I don't get that many messages. People all the time are like, can I message you? I'm like, yeah, of course. I'm not, trust me, I get like 5, maybe tops a day. But I'd love
And half of those are from HGTV, right?
Well, no, they text me sometimes, but no, I like to, I am a very accessible person right now. So feel free to reach out.
Well, that's awesome.
That's awesome. Yes. Well, all you listeners out there, make sure you're subscribing to the CIBL podcast on your favorite podcast platform. While you're there, give us a quick review. We would greatly appreciate it. You can also follow our CIBL social media pages on LinkedIn and Facebook. You can connect with Garrett and I personally there as well. And also on Instagram. Garrett, where else are you on any other platforms?
I think I'm on all of those. Yes.
Most of them, except for TikTok, right?
I am on TikTok, but I'm not active on it.
Just watching and scrolling.
Oh, perfect. Well, until next time, Reagan, you have officially been civilized. Thanks for coming on the
Civilized.
show.
Thanks so
Awesome.
much. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/CIBL Podcast. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It's the civilized thing to do.